You ever walk into a place and just know that the second they see you, the judgment's hit before your name even leaves their mouths? That was Damon's life. Every single day. He didn't wear the latest Nikes. He didn't roll up in anything sleek or polished. What he had was a battered, hand-me-down BMX that creaked like it was crying for mercy and brakes that screamed at every stop. But it was his. He built it, patched it, saved it. And on this particular morning, under that unforgiving sky outside Ridgeway High, the familiar sting of laughter hit him like a slap the second he pedaled through the gates. "Yo, Damon!" Bryce Jamison's voice sliced through the morning buzz, coated in arrogance. Bryce, rich, smug, the kind of kid who never had to fix anything in his life because Daddy's credit card fixed everything for him, was lounging against a titanium racing bike so shiny it practically glowed. Did you build that out of trash? Cans? Or does it just look that way because you're allergic to quality? The circle of rich kids around him howled like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Phones came up like reflexes. The moment was being captured, shared, devoured by group chats before Damon could even blink. But Damon didn't blink. Not this time. He dismounted calmly, letting the old bike stand on its own like a battle-worn soldier. He stared right at Bryce. And though every muscle in his body was wound tight, every nerve ready to explode, he didn't let it show. Not yet. Because this wasn't just about a joke. This wasn't the first time Bryce had mocked him. This was about years of being the punchline. About nights Damon spent helping his mom stretch paychecks. About weekends spent digging through junkyards for parts, because buying new ones was never an option. This was about Zia standing next to him, arms crossed, quiet but fierce. The kind of quiet that came with knowing too much too young. She'd been laughed at too, called scrap girl, gearhead, junkyard chick, but she wore that like armor. And now they were done playing small. "You think you're better than me because your daddy bought you a bike that does the work for you?" Damon said, his voice clear, even, slicing through the laughter like a blade. "Try building one. Try riding. Something you built with your own hands?" Bryce snorted, but the laugh didn't land the way it usually did. A few heads turned. A few kids even stopped filming. "Relax, hero. It's called a race for a reason," Bryce said. "You're gonna need more than rust and dreams to keep up." Damon took one step closer. "Then race me," he said. No hesitation, just heat. "Put all that money where your mouth is." The crowd gasped, a real one this time. Bryce raised an eyebrow like he couldn't believe what he was hearing, and that's when Zia finally stepped in. "He's serious," she said, voice sharp, like broken glass. "We're building the fastest bike in this city, and when we're done, we'll leave you choking on gravel." Bryce's face tightened, just for a second before he covered it with a smirk. "Fine," he said with a shrug. "When your Frankenstein bike's done, come find me. Till then, stay in your lane." He turned, the rich kids trailing him like shadows. But the air didn't move. Something had shifted. Damon felt it. Zia felt it. Even the kids watching from the lockers felt it. That click, that quiet moment after a line gets crossed and you can't go back. They hadn't just stood up. They'd challenged him, and Bryce had no idea the storm that was coming. People look at kids like Damon and Zia and think they know the whole story. Ragged shoes, grease-stained hands, riding bikes held together. With zip ties and pure stubbornness, they think that's the whole picture. But it's not. It never is. See, Damon wasn't born with grit. He earned it. His dad used to fix motorcycles before the accident, before a drunk driver turned a family into a survival act. After that, it was just Damon and his mom in a two-room apartment with walls so thin you could hear the neighbors argue through the vents. Every paycheck was a battlefield, every dinner a question mark. But the garage, that tiny shack behind their building filled with rusted chains and busted gears, that was the one place Damon could breathe. It was where he first learned to build something out of nothing. That's where the dream was born. Not in some glossy catalog or YouTube channel, but right there in that patch of concrete with his father's old tools and his mother's silent prayers. Zia's story wasn't much different. Her dad disappeared when she was 9. One day he kissed her forehead, said he'd be back with groceries, and never walked through that door again. Her mom tried to pick up the pieces, but grief doesn't pay bills. Zia found her way into Damon's orbit by accident, literally. She crashed her broken-down scooter into his stack of bike tires behind the building, and instead of yelling, he helped her fix it. They didn't talk much that first time, but something clicked. Two kids, both running low on everything, except potential. From that day on, they became inseparable. School by morning, bike builds by night. Their bond wasn't built on words. It was built on busted bolts, late-night ramen, and shared silence. But the pressure? It built just as fast. At school, they were nobodies. Worse than nobodies, they were targets. Bryce and his crew ruled Ridgeway like it was a kingdom. Designer shoes, private tutors, spring break in Dubai. They had everything handed to them in gold-plated packaging. Damon and Zia? They got laughs. Bryce had been mocking Damon for years, calling him junkyard boy, sneering every time. His chain slipped or his brake squealed. But Damon never gave him the satisfaction of reacting. Until now. Because this time, it wasn't just a joke anymore. This time, Damon had something to prove. See, what nobody knew, what even their teachers didn't realize, was that Damon and Zia had been quietly entering underground youth races outside the city. Borrowed helmets, no permits, no support, just raw skill and risk. They hadn't won yet, not once, but every loss taught them something new. Tire pressure, frame balance, wind drag. They studied YouTube tutorials the way other kids studied for exams. They watched pros on slow motion, braking, down every move, and little by little they started piecing together a monster, a bike that wasn't just fast. It was customized, light, agile, fierce, made with scraps, built with obsession, a Frankenstein machine with the heart of a champion. The final push came the day Damon's mom almost got evicted. He'd heard her, crying behind the door, whispering into the phone, "I'm doing the best I can." That night he didn't just work, he vowed. He told Zia, "We're not doing this just for fun anymore. We're winning! We're getting noticed! We're getting out!" Zia didn't say a word. She just nodded. That was the moment their mission changed. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was survival, redemption, escape. But as their dream got stronger, so did the resistance. Whispers started circling at school. Teachers suddenly lost their permission slips. Tools from the garage went missing. Someone slashed Damon's back tire with a box cutter. The message was clear. Stay in your place. But they didn't. They doubled down. Because by now they weren't just building a bike. They were building a legacy. You ever feel the air shift around you? Like something invisible just slid into place and now everything feels wrong? That's what started happening once word got out that Damon and Zia were building a race-worthy machine. At first, it was just background noise, muttered jokes, eye rolls, whispers as they passed in the halls. But then things started going missing. Their best wrench vanished from the garage. Damon's backpack got dumped out behind the gym, his math notes shredded and stuffed in a toilet. One afternoon, they came back from class to find their handlebars bent like someone had stomped on them with cleats. Coincidence? Nah. Someone was scared, and scared people don't play fair. It wasn't long before Damon started noticing things that didn't make sense. A teacher who'd always encouraged him suddenly wouldn't look him in the eye. Zia's mom got a call from the school saying Zia had skipped class, except she hadn't. Someone hacked the attendance logs. Someone was messing with them, deliberate, organized, calculated. And there was one name that kept coming up over and over again. Bryce. See, it turns out Bryce wasn't just some bored rich kid with a fancy bike. His dad was on the school board. His uncle owned one of the biggest bike shops in the city, the same one Damon and Zia had been hoping to get sponsorship from. And suddenly, that shop stopped returning their emails. Sponsorship? Gone. Emails? Ghosted. Every road they tried to take was suddenly blocked off. Zia dug deeper. She hacked into a shared student forum where Bryce's crew posted. What she found? Screenshots, photos of their bike project, DMs mocking the design. Bryce had been watching them for weeks, maybe longer, feeding their progress. To his cousin, who was designing a copycat build with better parts and a head start. Damon and Zia weren't just being mocked, they were being mirrored. Every innovation they worked so hard for was being stolen, refined, and used against them. And worse, the city qualifier, the one race that could have changed everything, had a new sponsor. Bryce's uncle. The rules suddenly rewritten to favor pre-built frames instead of custom hybrids. In short, Damon and Zia's bike would now be disqualified before it even touched the starting line. Damon was furious and heartbroken. "They're scared of us," he said one night, pacing the garage, grease streaked on his face like war paint. "They're scared because they know if we get one shot, one real shot, we'll blow past them so fast they'll forget how to breathe." But Zia didn't speak right away. She just stared at the broken chain she was holding, her fingers trembling. "We should have seen this coming," she whispered. "They don't care about rules. They care about control. And they're willing to burn the whole track down to keep it." But Damon looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Then we rebuild. We change the frame. We find another qualifier. If they block the front door, we go through the back." But nothing would be that simple, because betrayal was coming. And not from Bryce. Not yet. It came from closer, from someone they trusted. Someone who knew everything about their build, who'd help them test tires and tweak brakes. His name was Tavon, and up till now he'd been a quiet ally, watching, helping, never speaking much. But Zia spotted him outside Bryce's uncle's shop, handing over sketches. Their sketches, the ones they kept in a locked box in the garage. Stolen, sold. And just like that, the dream cracked at the edges, because the real enemy wasn't just outside. It was inside, too. There's a moment in every storm where the wind goes still, where the sky holds its breath and everything feels heavy. That's where Damon and Zia were now. Not in the eye of the storm, beneath it. Everything they'd worked for was crumbling, and they couldn't even tell where the cracks had started. After Tavon's betrayal, it wasn't just about racing anymore. It was about trust, violated, dreams, corrupted. They sat in the garage that night, neither speaking, both just staring at the half-disassembled bike frame between them. The tools were scattered. The air smelled like oil and defeat. Zia had a wrench in her hand, turning it over and over like she wanted it to explain something. "He knew," she finally said, barely above a whisper. "He knew how hard we worked. Why would he sell us out like that?" Damon didn't answer. His jaw clenched so tight it felt like his teeth would crack. Because deep down he already knew why. Money talks, and desperation shouts even louder. But the real breaking point came 2 days later. They'd found another qualifier, one that allowed custom bikes, one last hope hanging by a thread. Damon and Zia worked around the clock, cutting corners, redesigning their frame overnight. Zia barely slept, her fingers raw from sanding and welding. Damon skipped meals, pouring every ounce of pain into precision. They were running on fumes, but they were close, so close. Then, the morning of the race, Damon's mom collapsed in the hallway. She was dehydrated, exhausted. The second job she'd taken on to keep the lights on had pushed her too far. Damon rode with her in the ambulance, holding her hand while machines beeped and nurses moved like ghosts. And all he could think about was what for. All this pain, this pushing. For what? Zia showed up at the hospital that evening. She didn't say anything, just sat next to him and slipped the qualifier schedule into his lap. "You can still make it," she whispered. "I'll get the bike there. You just show up." But Damon shook his head. "I'm done," he said. Flat. Final. "It's not worth it." And for the first time, Zia snapped. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "Not worth it," she said, her voice sharp with something she'd been holding in for too long. "You think this was just about a trophy? About beating Bryce? Damon, we were building something bigger than us. We were proving we could matter, that we could choose where our lives go. You think walking away from that is strength? That's not strength. That's surrender." And then she left. Just like that. No goodbye, no plan. She walked out of the hospital, helmet in hand, eyes burning with hurt and fury. And Damon, he just sat there, broken, lost, watching the girl who had stood by him through everything walk away because he couldn't carry the weight anymore. Back at school, the whispers got louder. Bryce posted a picture of his new bike on social media, almost identical to Damon's design, but with a slick paint job and the caption, "Built right, not built poor. Thousands of likes, hundreds of laughing emojis. Damon didn't even react. Not this time. He stopped showing up to the garage, stopped replying to Zia's messages, stopped looking people in the eye, because when you lose your dream, it feels like losing your name. Like the person you were trying to become just evaporated, and all that's left is the kid they laughed at in the hallway. And Zia? She kept building, alone, kept showing up. Because deep down, she still believed, still hoped. But even she knew they were fractured now. And you can't race with half a heart. Just when you think the story is over, when the lights dim and the audience starts to leave, that's when it happens. The twist, the sucker punch, the moment everything flips. Because the truth? Life doesn't just fall apart for no reason. Sometimes it falls apart to reveal something hidden underneath, and that's exactly what happened next. Zia didn't give up. Even after Damon went silent, even after the qualifier passed and Bryce posted photos with his trophy and fake smile family, Zia kept going. Alone in that dusty garage, she re-welded the frame, reinforced the chain guard, upgraded the brakes. She didn't even know why anymore, only that she had to. One night, while digging through Damon's old blueprints, she found something strange, an envelope, taped beneath the toolbox, labeled "For Later." Inside was a letter, handwritten by Damon's dad, back when he could still move his hands. It wasn't technical specs or racing tips. It was a confession. Turns out, Damon's dad had once raced in illegal street circuits back before Damon was born. He'd been one of the best, until he turned someone in for throwing a race. That snitch move got him blacklisted and nearly killed. The accident that paralyzed him? It wasn't a drunk driver. It was sabotage. A rigged tire. Someone wanted him out permanently, and the man behind it all? Bryce's uncle. The same man now sponsoring local races. The same man who rewrote rules just to keep Damon out. It had always been personal. Always. Bryce wasn't just protecting privilege, he was protecting a legacy of corruption. Zia read the letter 3 times, her hands trembling. Then she took photos of every page and uploaded them anonymously to a public racing forum with thousands of followers. She didn't expect much. But the next morning, the internet exploded. Booker race rigging trended. Dozens of racers came forward with similar stories. Qualifiers suddenly canceled, disqualifications that made no sense. A full-blown investigation launched within 48 hours. Bryce's uncle was suspended pending review. Local news picked it up. And suddenly, Damon and Zia weren't poor kids with a dream anymore. They were whistleblowers, revolutionaries. But that wasn't even the twist. The real twist? It came from the person they least expected, Tavon. Out of nowhere, he showed. Up at the garage, face pale, hands shaking. Zia was ready to throw a wrench at him, but he raised his hands. "I messed up," he said. "I know. I did it for the money. My dad lost his job. We were about to get kicked out." He pulled something from his bag, a flash drive. "But I copied every message Bryce sent me, every file, every payment. I couldn't sleep. Not after what happened to Damon's mom. I want to make it right." Zia didn't trust him. Not yet. But she took the drive, turned it over to the investigators. And when Damon finally resurfaced, his face hollow, his eyes tired, she handed him the letter. Let him read his father's truth. And she watched. Something light up behind his eyes. Not fire, not fury. Focus. The kind of clarity that only comes when you finally understand the shape of the system built to break you. They rebuilt the bike together this time. Every weld, every bolt. A rebellion. Tavon helped. Not for redemption, but to witness the change. Damon called in a favor to a retired racer who used to know his dad. The man had a track. Private. Off the books. But still legal. The perfect place for a comeback no one saw coming, because if the world wouldn't give them a stage, they'd build their own. They say you can't fight the system, that it's too big, too old, too protected. But what they don't tell you is systems rot from the inside. And when the rot gets exposed to sunlight, even the biggest trees fall. That's what was starting to happen now. The quiet whispers about corruption, they turned into news reports. Investigations, headlines. Local race officials suddenly stopped answering phone calls. Bryce's uncle, Mr. Harrington, the untouchable man behind half the city's sports funding, was placed on administrative leave. And for the first time, he looked nervous. But the real reckoning? It started with Bryce. He walked into school the Monday after the story broke like nothing had happened. Head high, jacket crisp, fake charm, dialed to 10. But the vibe had changed. People didn't part for him like they used to. Girls didn't. Laugh at his jokes. His followers had dipped by thousands. The hallways didn't feel like his kingdom anymore. They felt like a courtroom, and every eye was a jury. And then Damon walked in. No fanfare, no speech. Just him and Zia side by side, rolling in the real bike. The one they built from scratch. Rebuilt after betrayal, lies, sabotage, and sabotage again. The chain glinted, the frame shimmered. It didn't look like a protest. It looked like vengeance on wheels. Bryce froze, smirk twitching, trying to find his old rhythm. "Didn't know they let charity cases back on campus," he said, voice too loud, too desperate. But no one laughed. Zia stepped forward, cool and calm like ice. "Didn't know they let cheaters stay enrolled," she shot back. The silence that followed, deafening. By lunch, the final nail in Bryce's reputation was hammered in, the footage. Tavon had saved screen-recorded DMs, voice memos of Bryce mocking Damon's mom's health, bragging about buying out the poor kids. It leaked. And it didn't just spread through school. It hit TikTok, Twitter, Reddit. Everyone saw it, everyone. The comments were brutal. Sponsors started pulling support. Bryce's scholarship, revoked pending review. His bike team, disqualified. The boy who used to control the narrative was now drowning in it. Meanwhile, Damon and Zia started getting calls, interviews, support. Kids they didn't even know started showing up at the garage offering to help. Parents sent donations. A GoFundMe? Fully funded in 36 hours. But Damon wasn't smiling yet, because this wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. And justice had one more name on its list, Mr. Harrington. The school board announced a hearing, public, televised. Damon and Zia were invited to speak, and speak they did. Zia went first, detailing every roadblock, every stolen design, every violation. Then Damon stood up, holding the letter from his dad, hands steady. "You tried to erase my family," he said, voice ringing across the room. "But we're still here, and we're not going away." The board listened. The crowd applauded. Mr. Harrington sat stone-faced as they read the decision. Permanently banned from sponsoring any youth events. Bryce's name, removed from all school records relating to past championships. And Damon and Zia, granted official commendations for bravery and resilience. But the best moment, the sweetest moment, wasn't in that room. It was 1 week later. A new race, new sponsors, fair rules. Damon and Zia standing at the start line, suited up, helmets on. The bike gleamed under the sun, and across the track where Bryce used to stand, there was nothing but empty space. No privilege, no power. Just the sound of a countdown clock and two kids, once mocked, once broken, about to make the city eat its words. The sun was burning low over the city, painting the track in fire-orange light. Spectators lined the fences, some cheering, some just watching with that kind of electricity in their eyes that says something big is about to happen. But this wasn't like the old races. No flashy sponsors, no corporate banners, just community, cameras, and consequence. Damon adjusted his gloves. Zia checked the torque one last time, and when they looked at each other, nothing needed to be said. They were ready. Across the line, the new competition stood waiting. Real riders now. Hungry riders. Kids who had come from nowhere with everything to prove, just like Damon and Zia had once been. But the difference now? Damon wasn't proving anything to them. He was proving something to himself. That he was more than what they said about him. More than the poverty. More than the pity. More than the pain. The official lifted the flag. "Riders ready?" Damon's heartbeat synced to the countdown. 3, 2, 1, go. And they were off. The bike, their bike, moved like lightning. Every weld, every wire, every whisper of wind had been accounted for. Zia's design didn't just hold up. It dominated. Corners that used to slow them down. They took them like fire across steel. Damon leaned into the curves, heart and machine fused into one. The crowd was losing its mind. but he barely heard them. All he heard was the engine, and his father's words in that letter. We don't quit. We don't cheat. We ride until they can't look away. But halfway through, something went wrong. A wobble in the rear wheel. Damon felt it instantly. "Loose axle!" Zia screamed into the earpiece. "Hold steady!" Every second counted. Another rider was gaining fast. Rico, the local favorite, the one with 3 podium finishes. He came up on Damon's right, pushing him toward the outer track, and Damon made the decision. He braked. For a moment, it looked like he was giving up. The crowd gasped. Rico surged ahead, but Damon wasn't done. He pulled to the edge, reached down, mid-glide, and snapped the axle lock into place with one hand. When he pushed off again, the roar from the bleachers shook the sky. Last lap. It was him and Rico, and something deeper than rivalry. Rico looked over, surprised. "Didn't think you'd catch up." Damon didn't blink. "Didn't think you'd stay ahead." They hit the final curve neck and neck, and Zia's voice crackled in. "Now!" Damon activated the burst mode they'd spent months perfecting. Dual coil acceleration, heatsink adjusted. The bike launched forward like it had been waiting its whole life for that exact moment. Rico disappeared behind him like a ghost. The finish line blurred past. Silence. Then the eruption. People screamed, kids climbed fences, reporters rushed the barriers. Damon skidded to a stop and looked back. Zia was sprinting toward him, helmet in hand, tears streaking down her cheeks. She tackled him in a hug so hard it nearly knocked him off the seat. They'd won. Not just the race, not just the trophy. They'd won back their names. And the best part? Bryce watched it all, from the sidelines. Anonymous. Forgotten. The crowd, that once chanted for him, now chanted Damon's name. But Damon didn't gloat. He walked past Bryce, slow, deliberate, and said the words that ended it all. "You were fast, but we were right." Bryce didn't answer. He just looked down, because there's no comeback from truth. Mock someone's struggle, and they might just turn it into a motor. That's the thing people don't understand about pain. It doesn't just break people. Sometimes it builds engines. It shapes momentum. And the same kids they called hopeless, too loud, too poor, or not fit for success became the very blueprint of redemption. Damon? He didn't just graduate, he shattered ceilings. A full-ride scholarship to one of the top engineering programs in the country. A boy who once built toy rockets from plastic bottles now speaks at youth summits as a national advocate for STEM inclusion and athletic equity in underserved schools. Every word he speaks now ignites sparks in rooms where kids were once told to be quiet. Zia, the quiet force behind every brainstorm session, was offered early college admission. She turned wrenches and code into poetry. She's now featured in engineering magazines and innovation panels, her face on the cover of What Brilliance Looks Like When It's Raised in a Storm. And Kiki, the girl they laughed at for mentoring others when she still needed help herself? She started a community mentorship program that partners teen mentors with at-risk youth. She doesn't just guide them, she protects them. Her group's motto? We don't wait for change, we raise it. And they did. But not everyone made that turn. Bryce? He stayed bitter. Still works retail, still walks like the world owes him something. The light in his eyes dulled under the weight of entitlement. Still blames everyone else. Still pretends the game was rigged, even though he never learned how to play it with grace. His father, the same man who once pulled strings to exclude kids like Damon from local scholarships, was quietly removed from the city board in a scandal that screamed of backdoor deals and ethics violations. Some call it karma, others call it cleanup. Either way, he's gone. And Mr. Holbrook, the man who once walked away from his reputation to stand beside the kids no one else would, opened a non-profit garage called Holbrook's Wheels of Change. It's not shiny, it's not fancy, but it's alive, filled with scraps and stories, and every afternoon, it fills with laughter, grease, and second chances. Damon volunteers there every week, teaching kids to build bikes from parts people threw away. He tells them, "This bolt right here used to hold someone down. Now it holds your wheels up." And they listen, because he's proof. Narrator. We don't rise despite poverty. Damon runs behind them, cheering, tears in his eyes, hope in his chest, because this wasn't about revenge.